Now, the ANC NEC Lekgotla got underway in Kempton Park this morning. While the country anxiously awaits the president's SONA address next month, he has already given an indication of how government will tackle the power crisis. eNCA senior reporter Siphamandla Goge is at that Lekgotla monitoring these developments. Now, let's cross over to him for further updates. Sipa, the president touched on next year's election. What's his take?
Well, basically, he was telling ANC NEC members, provincial secretaries and chairpersons and ANC deployees to government to say, listen, next year's general election is going to be the most toughest one that the ANC has ever faced. He was contextualizing that, basing it, taking his cue from the fact that the governing party is facing so many socio-economic challenges that it's been unable to deal with, and its government has been unable to solve the energy crisis, particularly the issue of ESCOM, the issue of violent crime, unemployment, poverty, inequality, gender-based violence and femicide. So he was saying to ANC, NEC members, deployees to government and provincial leaders that, listen, you have to go out there and convince the electorate that we have a plan to fix these things. Of course, his address was going to be debated during the closed session. Inputs were going to be made by those who are attending the ANC NEC Lekgotla. But simply put, it was a wide-ranging address that touched on a number of issues with a special focus on the energy crisis, saying the ANC-led government is working on a plan to deal decisively and eradicate load shedding very soon. Of course, we have heard that before with former President Jacob Zuma saying load shedding was going to be the thing of the past. ANC president currently, Mr. Ramaphosa himself, when he took over, he made a number of promises that have been unkept. Load shedding has been escalating under his administration. He has had to cut a number of foreign trips to focus on addressing the issue of ESCOM and load shedding. But as we speak, South Africans are still subjected to load shedding, which is a crisis, by the way, that the ANC-led government would not claim that they were not aware of. They were warned before, during former President Thabo Mbeki's administration, former President Jacob Zuma's administration, former President Kgalema Motlante's administration, and currently Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa's administration has dismally failed to deal with load shedding. But the president of the ANC is saying the biggest task now is for the ANC to get into that election mode, go out there and convince the electorate that they've got a plan to fix all the challenges that the country is facing. But he did not say why they've been unable to fix them in the past. Let's take a listen.
In just over a year from now, our country will be holding national and provincial elections. The ANC will then have to engage in probably the most difficult election campaign that we have ever fought. The outcome of that election will have profound implications for the direction of the National Democratic Revolution and indeed for the future of our country. Although no party has had an official launch of its election campaign, as one observes, the campaigns for 2024 elections are well underway. We need to get into election mode without delay. And perhaps this is the Lekgotla, and it must be one of the platforms that we utilize to actually get our election campaign underway. Through our actions now, we need to send a clear message and signal to voters that the ANC is taking all necessary steps to deal with the challenges that our people are confronted with, especially unemployment, the rising cost of living, crime and instability, the poor service delivery. Our focus must therefore be on action, and urgency.
So it's official now, the NWC has been elected, but how are the provinces doing with their lists, Sipa?
Well, that's the most interesting one, because the provinces and the ANC national leadership will have to be seized with the issue of the list. Why that matters? It matters simply because they are newly elected members of the National Executive Committee of the ANC that would need to become members of the National Assembly before they could be appointed into executive roles such as ministers. Now, that is where the challenge is, because remember, all political parties will have their lists submitted, and those who get deployed to other provincial legislatures or the National Assembly, they are taken from those lists. Now, with the ANC conference having produced an outcome of newly elected NEC members, some of them who are expected or tipped to be deployed to government, including the current Deputy President of the ANC, Mr. Paul Mashatile, who is set to replace Mr. Mabuza, and a number of NEC members are said to be going to be deployed to the National Assembly, and for the President to consider appointing them either as ministers or deputy ministers. So that's where the trick is, and we understand that a number of ANC provinces as well as Lutuli House are seized with the matter of replenishing the list, trying to consolidate and rework the list so that they can get more or newly elected NEC members into those lists so that they could be eligible for appointment as ministers. But let's take a listen to how Mr. Mbalula responded to that question when we asked him about the lists as the Secretary General of the ANC. This is what he had to say.
All our provinces this week will look into the list and replenishment, and we'll keep you informed about if that is going to happen about the Deputy President. This week we'll inform you. Maybe by Tuesday we will inform you about the replenishment of list and so on. Province to national and provinces are replenishing list. People have come forward with proposals. So in terms of replenishment, so post the Lekgotla process, we are meeting even here with different provincial secretaries about that matter. So we will inform you on Tuesday or later on about those replenishments.
And, you know, we've heard these reports about Deputy President David Mabuza that he says that he will step down if asked by the President.
Absolutely, and today he did not attend this ANC NEC Lekgotla, as my colleague Joe Komane is showing you the visuals of the presidential motorcade. I take it this is the President of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, who's attending an ANC meeting. Of course, he's the President of the governing African National Congress. This is his motorcade that is leaving, signaling the fact that indeed he is leaving Kempton Park. But remember, this gathering is a two-day gathering of the ANC NEC. It's the Lekgotla of the ANC, but their president is currently leaving. Of course, he will come back because the gathering is set down for 2 days. Tomorrow he has to deliver the closing address at this ANC NEC Lekgotla. He's number 2 when it comes to the government of the Republic of South Africa. That is Mr. David Mabuza did not attend today's gathering of the NEC, saying that he is apologizing. He sent through an apology saying that he's got prior commitments that he cannot get out of, which is very strange, by the way, because in terms of how the ANC operates, the Deputy President of the Republic is usually assigned to be the one dealing with state-owned entities. It was the case when former President Jacob Zuma was the President, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa was the Deputy President chairing the war room that was dealing with ESCOM, and Mr. Mabuza had been tasked with dealing with a number of state-owned entities, including ESCOM itself. But today they are discussing the energy crisis and Mr. Mabuza is not here. That is very strange, because ordinarily he would have had to make an input before the minister who's deployed to public enterprises can also make an input when it comes to how they plan to deal with the energy crisis. Also, the ANC deployee, who's the minister responsible for energy, would have had to make an input. So Mr. Mabuza did not attend today's meeting, and that fueled speculation that he has indeed resigned. That is not confirmed, simply because the presidency has not confirmed that he has resigned, but reports are there and speculation is rife that he has told President Ramaphosa that he is resigning so that to make way for Mr. Paul Mashatile to be considered for the appointment of the Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa. But we expect that at least by Tuesday there will be some movement in terms of those cabinet reshuffle talks, because the logic dictates that for President Ramaphosa to undertake Cabinet Lekgotla, he cannot go to that Lekgotla with ministers that he will be firing shortly. So he has to appoint new ministers that he will take to the Cabinet Lekgotla. They will get to understand what are the marching orders, and perhaps by Tuesday or Wednesday, the likelihood is that there will be some movement. If you take into account that Mr. Mbalula has indicated that by Tuesday the ANC will be done with replenishing its list, that tells you that a number of NEC members would have been sworn in as members of the National Assembly or members of Parliament. Therefore, they will be eligible for appointment as ministers. That will address the question and the issue of the Deputy President of the Republic. We expect that by at least midweek, Tuesday or Wednesday, there will be some movement in that regard when it comes to the issue of the cabinet reshuffle and the Deputy President of the Republic. Listen to Mr. Mbalula responding to that question when we asked him about the reported resignation of Mr. Mabuza.
No, the President has not shared anything about the resignation of the Deputy President. And the Deputy President has apologized. His apology was read, and you were there. So his apology is accepted. There's no problem about it. David Mabuza has been one of the most loyal servant of the ANC. And he has served our movement with diligence, dignity, and integrity and discipline. So from that point of view, we know him to be well organized and disciplined. He's not the kind of person who competes for positions or for anything of that sort, or who's chaotic in how he does things. He's well organized. He's a disciplined member of the ANC. And if he apologizes that he cannot make it to this meeting, his apology is accepted. If he resigns, he will engage and talk to the President, and the President will engage. At the present moment, we are orderly. We come from a conference. We are now at the Lekgotla. We come from a National Executive Committee. And we've got a clear mandate in terms of what we need to do to be obsessed with people's interests. That's what is important.
Thank you so much for that update, Siphamandla Goge. He is there in Kempton Park at the NEC Lekgotla, the ANC NEC Lekgotla. Of course, we just saw the President leaving that meeting, but of course we know it's a two-day meeting, so the President should be returning back. And like Sipa also said, very interesting that Deputy President David Mabuza isn't at that meeting. But